interviewing. You know, that's what they doing. Stick around. It's about to get all roomy up in here. Remote Ruby starts now.
Andrew, it's Thursday again.
It is Thursday. And you want to know why I love Thursday?
Because tomorrow is Friday?
Well, that's part of it, but I get to see your beautiful face and cool. I get to talk to my friend on Thursday.
Yeah, it's funny because like ever since we started the podcast, I always look forward to it because I'm like, finally get a rant about something, whatever it is that week. I don't know if I have anything like that I'm annoyed with that badly this week, though.
Really?
I'm sure you do.
There's something you should be annoyed by. They're coming for our title, bro. The Rails Foundation's creating their own podcast, bro. They're encroaching, bro.
Yep. That can easily become the top podcast, especially the official podcast.
I haven't listened to it yet,
the top one.
I heard Robbie's hosting it, so that makes me even more worried.
Yeah, the first one was with Rosa. I listened to like 15 minutes of it, and then I paused it because I was like, this is too good. I need to actually...
Yeah.
Because I was listening while I was working, and then I got distracted, and I was like, I'm going to miss all of this. So I had to hit pause. So I got a road trip tomorrow and Sunday that will be the perfect time to listen to that. So it's the On Rails podcast, if anybody...
Because they have branding rights.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, come on, man. They're coming for our title, bro. I feel threatened. My podcast app just got updated with this new feature where it will like ask you like 5 or 10 minutes after you finish an episode to reflect on it. And it has automatic... I use Snipped. I'll put a referral link. Disclosure, it will be a referral link in the show notes. But I've been using it for a few years now, probably. And I really love it. And it's just getting better and better. Like you can ask the episode questions now. It does like automatic content snipping. Snips like have the transcript in it and they can like generate summaries from it. And then you can sync those snippets to like other apps, Readwise, and then Notion, Obsidian, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah.
Nifty. I like it.
That's good to know that I need to pay attention, Zoe. Yeah, I will put a referral link in the show notes. Use my referral link. I think that was one of the big things that happened this week that I saw. So
that's a big one.
Are we going to lose our number one spot on the Rails survey? I hope not. We're going to step our game up.
Yeah, we're going to have to. I can't believe that, 12 days left, 13 days left for RailsConf. And then today, Rails Foundation posted about my talk at Rails World. And I logged into Sessionize and it was like, Rails World in 2 months. And I was like, what?
That means my sabbatical is in 1 month. Crap. Hey. I have work to do, bro.
But then you have no work to do for an entire month.
I have to do work to do that because I have to figure out what I'm doing. Because the thing I was planning on doing requires planning. And we're in a loop here.
Yeah, that's an interesting point of like, you've got to prepare to be gone for a month. And I assume that you guys try to plan stuff a little bit around that ahead of time so that you're not too swamped trying to squeeze in an extra month's worth of work when you knew you weren't going to be there in the first place or whatever. But I probably feel similar to when I try to take a month off or anything like that. Yeah, I'm still freaking out until the day of or still doing some work a little bit. You better not, though.
No,
you're not your own boss.
No, I'm definitely not. I'm the type of person like I can totally turn it off if I need to. I can forget I even work.
Which is real devastating when you have to come back to work.
Dude, tell me about it. Speaking of RailsConf, our friend Joe Mazzolotti is going to be giving a workshop there, and Hotwire Native 1.2 was released this week, I believe.
I saw he made a pull request to jumpstart iOS. But I did not know Hotwire Native 1.2 came out. Or no, 1.2 came out in April, bro.
He says Hotwire Native 1.2.x. I was reading his blog post earlier. He posted this yesterday.
Is there a small bug fix release or something?
There are 2 patch releases this week with 1.2.1 on iOS and 1.2.3 on Android. I wonder what happened there with that extra 2 points. Yeah, Android got 2 patch releases, something with a 406 error and a way to show or hide the first party tab bar programmatically. And then iOS got an update for restored support for running the demo app on iOS 15, but most importantly, it added a new path configuration property, query string presentation to match behavior on Android.
Nice. Okay.
I don't know if you've seen anything about iOS 26, but it is a huge change. So I'm curious. I haven't looked into a lot of like what's changing under the hood, but
I wonder how much of the APIs that you're used to are affected or not.
Well, I mean, they went from like iOS 15 to iOS 26. Like, bro, you just hit 10 or 11 major versions.
Windows 95. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what all gets affected. The glass design, I'm sure, affects your icons and other things that you might have or whatever. So there might be little nuances to getting that right or improving it for iOS. It's going to be so hard to consider it iOS 26. But I haven't downloaded any of the betas or anything yet. So.
I'm so tempted. I'm not going to because I know I'm about to travel and I usually use the betas, but they churn out so much more of your battery. So
really? Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't want to have to like revert back. So I'll just leave it where it is for now.
Sure.
But I want to.
I thought about doing it on my iPad because I don't really use that very often. And that would be a safe, or my old iMac, I guess. While I can, because it's an Intel iMac.
No, I was going to say, I can't. I have an Intel Mac too that I can't upgrade.
I think there's only support for
Silicon.
Like until next release 27 or something will be the last one that supports most recent Intel Macs or something.
Yeah, so, that sounds right. I have an iPad.
They're getting ready to cut it off.
I use like the sidecar thing. Like it's literally right below my monitor, and I can like drag my mouse down, and it will go onto my iPad.
Oh,
and I don't really even ever do anything with that. But if I upgraded my iPad, I'm pretty sure like sidecar needs the versions to be in sync. So I'm definitely not going to upgrade my work Mac.
That would make sense.
Some Ruby Gems updates. Ruby Gems 3.6.9 came out and Bundler 2.6.9 came out. Okay. Those are very nice.
Bundler?
Yeah. One of the more interesting things that I found was Ruby Gems is laying the foundation work for bringing Python-style wheels to Ruby Gems with a goal of enhancing the experience of both using and producing gems with native extensions. So they're trying to improve support for precompiled binaries.
Yes, I heard about this because I was at the last couple conferences bugging various people about how one of the biggest issues
I remember that,
Ruby, period, is no precompiled versions. And I think it was Vinny Stock who mentioned that Sam Giddens has been working on a Wheels project, but I didn't know that was like a Python thing or whatever.
Python style.
Pythonwheels.com. Wheels are the new standard of Python distribution and are intended to replace eggs. Okay.
I love that they call it eggs. But going from eggs to wheels is kind of crazy.
Yeah, eggs with wheels.
It said the focus has shifted toward a broader vision, combining compatibility tags, SIG-Store attestation, and common platform build workflows with SLSA, trusted publishing, etc. to streamline how precompiled gems are distributed and consumed. I don't know what half those words mean. I'm going to be straight up with you.
I think a lot of it is to ensure security around like you're downloading these precompiled executables, so you don't really know what's in them. Whereas like if you download a gem, you can actually poke through the source code and stuff, read exactly what's there. But the C extensions are trickier. And then I think Sam told me at one point, like we were talking about some of that security, but having like reproducible builds so that you could verify like this SHA or hash of this executable is exactly right because it was built on a fresh Ubuntu image from Docker or whatever. It has exactly these packages because if somebody was able to inject something into the build pipeline before it gets released, then that's another source of vulnerability and stuff too. So having reproducible builds where it can output the exact binaries that you expected and they're hashed and everything. So you can confirm that. I know has been kind of a important thing they've been talking about, trying to figure out how to make that smooth and everything.
Imagine the last time you had to deal with request timeouts or backed up job queues in your prod environment. Frustrating, right? Here's what that means. You're either not autoscaling or your autoscaler is not doing its job, because autoscaling is supposed to prevent scenarios like this. That's why we built JudoScale. JudoScale is the autoscaler that works for Heroku, Render, Fly, and AWS. With JudoScale, you'll smoothly handle traffic spikes while dramatically lowering your hosting costs. Do you want a rock-solid production environment? Visit judoscale.com/remote-ruby to learn more.
The other big thing was experimental namespacing landed in Ruby main.
Oh, yeah. I
Which
saw,
we talked about that already.
Yeah. That's cool that it landed in Maine. I'm sure that Xavier will have some interesting additional blog posts and stuff, because I know he wrote about that roughly right after that came out, I think. And I don't remember all the details of that, but it does affect that kind of stuff. So,
yeah, they do a good job of explaining it. This enables applications to require or load libraries in isolation from the global namespace, including RB files and native extensions. Dependencies loaded within a namespace remain confined to it. So currently, Ruby has only one global shared namespace, and the proposed namespacing feature will help avoid name conflicts between libraries that define the same modules or classes and prevent unintended sharing of global objects. Dude, this is embarrassing. I'm going to say it anyway. It cost me at least 30 minutes, and it was a few months ago, but I was trying to make a freaking helper, and I was like, why the hell is this helper method returning this completely incorrect data? Like, I don't understand. I'm racking my brain. And I think it was finally Jason. I think I literally called someone, and Jason was like, I'm pretty sure we have another helper named that.
yeah.
And I was
That's what
just like,
guess.
what the hell, dude?
Yeah. That's always been a strange thing, that they've always been global like that. And at the same time, like, I'd be curious to see how they approach that, like in Basecamp or something, because they're not a team that likes components and stuff, as far as I understand. And so they're using helpers for things and whatever. And it's like, one of the nice parts about a component is that you could put your helpers namespaced and private to that widget that you're trying to render or something. So I'd be curious to see, like, in a large application like that, how do they approach that if they're not using that? And so maybe, do we have a special guest?
What the dude? I just pooped myself a little.
Yeah.
A little pee came out.
I saw
Whoa.
your Slack status, and I, for weeks, thought, oh, one day when Andrew's recording, I'm just going to see if the old link
Amazing.
still works. And it does.
Yeah.
I'm so happy to see your beautiful face.
Welcome to the show. Special guest, Jason Jarnes.
Y'all talking about how Rails Foundation's putting y'all out of business?
We're done.
got on the podcast and was immediately hot about that, and Chris did not care. I was like, they're coming for us, dude. And you don't.
It's time to Ryan Bates it. And just disappear
Send it
from
off.
the internet. You take your forever sabbatical.
Yeah. My sabbatical is going to be indefinite.
When is your Sabby? That's what they call me in Australia.
In mid-August. I don't know about that, but in mid-August, I end it at Rails World.
Oh.
My first day back at work is the Monday after Rails World.
So you're going to Rails World as part of your sabbatical?
Yes.
Man, you really screwed that one up.
Well, I wasn't sure if I was going to Rails World at that time yet, so
Did
I
you,
just kind of planned it so that if I could go to Rails World, then I could possibly like trope around Europe a little bit before going to Amsterdam.
so are you
Or
going
I'm
to do
going to
that?
trope around Utah. I'm not sure yet. I need to.
Same
I need
thing.
to plan. That requires planning, and I got so many plans cooking right now. That I
Did
don't
you
have.
get that sweet bus route ride to Rails World?
I did, yes,
My man.
yeah, but we won't be able to anymore when this new podcast comes out.
Yeah, y'all are screwed.
Our sweet rides are gone, dude.
Hey, man, nothing gold can stay.
Yes, I
It's
got a really
tarnished.
funny joke about that I don't want to say.
Jamie and I will be at the old Rails World. We should try and get on the
Nice.
same flight. That would be chaotic.
Rowdy.
I had
The
like a mental
Podia private
breakdown on
jet.
my way back from the last one.
Well, I don't want to be on the flight back then, just the one there.
Oh, just one there. I'm down.
All right.
One-way ticket.
One way ticket. Well, I
What are
guess
y'all
I
talking
might be
about?
going earlier. Well, we're currently talking about the experimental namespace thing that just landed in Ruby main.
Whew, gotta go. See ya.
Yeah, that's what it is.
All right. Well,
He's still here.
He's still
keep
here.
on. Keep on. See you later.
Bye.
All right.
Love you.
Bye.
Wow. I'm
Oh,
sweating
that
a
was
little
fun.
bit. See, they can't come for us now when we got special guests popping in, dude. Come on.
Do you guys namespace your models and stuff? I assume I have to at a certain size, anyways, right?
I'm all about it. Jason has actually, it's funny that we brought this up because he literally has opinions on this. He went on a little tear recently about we over modulize, but I really like modularization.
Yeah.
I think it just really helps my mental model of things. I like having things co-located. All the things related to this object are in this namespace. So yeah, we use a high amount of modularization.
We're building a new app and I've started doing quite a bit of that too. And I think it's been good. There's definitely been some annoying things. Similar to you guys, we have a private area, like the admin area type thing for the business users, and then like the public facing side of things, which means that we like need two folders with the same two articles, controllers, or whatever.
I'm
And they're
very
different.
familiar with that. Yep.
And that's really, really nice for like, look, the public side cannot possibly ever edit a record. They can only like view records or something. But then we also had, I forget, a few things that I wanted to namespace into, like, because we're building like a little help center thing. I have a namespace of help collections and help articles and whatever. So the models are like help collection, but I think I did has many articles instead of like has many help articles because we're already in the namespace. But that gets a little annoying because you might end up writing your routes as like the articles path, but then like you render at articles and it ends up rendering the help article partial or whatever. So that gets to be like a little annoying because it's not as consistent across everything.
But you know how you make it consistent with those direct routes we talked about.
Yeah, I do need to use that. I forgot we talked about that the other day.
It's a dangerous tool, so don't just willy-nilly be slapping it in there. But
I feel like it's one of those things where I'm going to have to go re-listen to us talking about that because I feel like I've forgotten what direct routes means already, and I have to relearn it.
it's funny you say that because I actually got some listener feedback the other week, and my friend texted me. He said, "Not Chris yawning while you're explaining direct routes." And I went back and listened to it, and you 100% do yawn as I'm like explaining it.
Yeah, I was so bored. Obviously,
Yeah, I would have been too. You kind of back yourself into a hole to a degree, but one thing that can really, really help is concerns. You can abstract a lot of the logic into those, and then you can call super if you need to do extra things in the specific namespace. And the other thing is like using those shared, like one thing we'll have a lot of is a shared partial that gets rendered or a shared turbo stream that gets rendered.
Yeah.
Regardless of the namespace, like it uses a concern and then it renders like a shared thing. If it looks the same anyway. And that way all the setup logic can be contained in your base controllers for that module and it can have, whatever it needs done. But at the end of the day, it can kind of come down the pipeline in one wrapped up API, which is kind of Sandy Metz-esque.
Okay. I need to go back through it a little bit because I think the first time I've like went super heavy on namespacing things and like it gets to be pretty messy pretty fast if you are not being careful and consistent with it. I know that one of the things I did was a help article typically has like a frown, neutral, and like a smiley face, and you can give feedback on it. And we had a general feedback record as well as like a help article feedback. Well, I don't necessarily need to make it a help article feedback. There's not really going to be any other feedbacks in this help section. So I just named it help feedback, but I think it's like collections has many articles and articles has many help feedbacks. And I was like, oh shoot, I meant to make that just feedback, but you have to then remember like you're in the help namespace and whatever. So naming consistency there is like, it's funny because you're like, this is really annoying to be redundant so often. And yet, if I'm not redundant, then I have to remember this namespace and stuff. And it shows up whether you use it or not when you're like rendering partials out or something. And maybe I just need to be a little bit more explicit and like just instead of render the active record relation, just render partial with the collection and just specify exactly the partial path I want for things or whatever. So when production breaks, you want to quickly understand and fix it, not sift through logs for the next hour. That's where Honeybadger comes in. Honeybadger notifies you of errors and outages and puts performance in context to help you fix the issue faster. Learn more at honeybadger.io. That's www.honeybadger.io.
I'm one of those people where and this was something Nate Hopkins instilled in me. You will never see me write render partial table. I will always write the entire path. Always.
Yeah. You
A
got
big
like slash home slash deploy slash.
But if you have like a top level, because like I've said before, we have top level objects like namespaces and Podia because we have these different sections of the application. So you can also have your own routes file for those sections. Help isn't an object, and that's what I don't love about that namespace, unless that's the entire, almost like a subdomain, like a tenancy type thing.
Yeah, that's kind of more what we're gonna do with it.
Well, then you can just create like a help routes file, and then you won't have to write help _ post articles path. You can have them post path, and then when you're in that namespace, like in the controllers or in the views, it will do the right thing.
So far, it's turned out pretty good. But it was a lot of those little decisions at the beginning to get that set up well. Oh, I had a fun thing. I won't talk too much about the specific person or application, but we had a Jumpstart customer who I did a code review of his app this week. And we had a lot of fun with that because he had pretty much vibe coded the entire thing. And he like built a pretty darn complex app, at least considering he had not a ton of skills as a programmer. Like he had tried to build this application 3 or 4 times, outsourcing it to people in other countries. He was like, dude, the crazy thing is like, I can actually make something that's functional and works the way I wanted to by using Claude or whatever. And it does a better job than having outsourced this to somebody in another country. And I was like, that's a pretty impressive feat there. There was a lot of those.
Tells me that they have trouble communicating because to outsource it, you have to be able to really communicate exactly what you're trying to build.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing is like, he wasn't necessarily that technical of a person. So like, he doesn't know all of those edge cases or nuances to even tell somebody to worry about that. So he has to go in this feedback loop of like, I tell you to do this thing. You did it kind of right, but kind of wrong. But I had to see it and interact with it to determine that. So it was really interesting to see that he basically was able to accomplish that in a much better time frame and way more cost effective too by doing it that way. Don't get me wrong, it was really rickety in a lot of places because of that, not knowing all the nuances that you need to make sure you're explicit with. One of the examples is like, when you're building something with multiple accounts and you don't want your data to bleed into anybody else's account, you have to be careful with all of your turbo streams. You have to make sure you have the current account or user or whatever it is inside those broadcast channels. The examples it's going to generate are like this model. We'll just use the plural model name as the channel. And then I sign up and try it with 2 different accounts, one incognito and one not. I do something here and it shows up in somebody else's account, but you refresh that page and then it's gone. Or click any of the links that it inserted and like they don't work because that ID is not part of your account. And I was showing him that kind of stuff. You have to be really careful with that. And it's one of those things that is tough too as a beginner where you're like, you're building something and you've got your test data and whatever, but you're like just getting the features to work for the one person at a time. And then you have to step back and think about this as a whole system. Well, there could be thousands of people on Shopify all at once editing their own unique stores. So we can never let that stuff bleed across. But yet, when you're doing it just for one person at a time, you're just trying to wire it up to make it work, period. And so you can miss some of those little things. So that was some advice. We caught a few things like that and told him, definitely be careful with this because that is one of the security things or whatever. Or like, I know he had scoped most of his records and the controllers properly. It was a little convoluted how it ended up getting set up, but I was like, just turn on Access Tenant, or I'm sure this is coming because I've seen it in the Fizzy demos, but it was like Active Tenant or whatever the name of the multi-tenant thing that it looks like is going to be open sourced in Rails at some point. But having a library like that to enforce the current tenant in every query and raise an error if not, that was something where I was like, you've gotten really far without any of these things. But once you get into production and have real data and whatever, you do not want to be cleaning up the mess. You want to try and do that earlier than going into real customer data. And that's when you're going to have to go hire somebody. And it's like, you can try and vibe code through all those fixes, but you might need somebody to actually sit down and sort through the mess.
There's no substitute for like a really good QA person. Like I've worked with an awesome QA person in the past, and it's night and day, like the amount of help that they can provide. One of those other things that like you don't think about when you're trying to like build this type of stuff is like that I ran into recently was touchscreen devices. Not mobile phones, but like laptops with touch screens. And it's like, oh, well, this thing doesn't do this. Why? I don't understand. Like you're on a computer, like I can do it on my computer. Like, oh, well, it's actually a touchscreen device. And it just so happens that we never thought about that when we were setting all this up. So it's missing like a few events that need to, blah, blah, blah. But it's one of those things where it's like, wow, I would never have thought about that. On Safari, you can install, through Xcode, you can install simulators for iPhones and things like that. And I had to specifically test a feature on an iPhone because it was one of those kind of a touch mobile things where it's like, this doesn't happen anywhere except on this device. The easiest way for me to test, I can use a simulator. You can test it right there. And there you go. Yeah, there's a lot of things that like, if you don't have that experience, I feel like you have to like run into it at least once in your career before you even know, oh, we need to think about touchscreen devices when we're building this drag and drop feature, or we need to think about mobile phones when we're adding like hover tooltips to things, stuff like that.
Yeah. Accessibility is one of the ones that I struggle with too, for that reason, where it's, if I'm not listening to a screen reader, which I don't normally do, then I don't think about it sometimes. And then you come back to it later and you're like, oh, shoot, this implementation of this works fine because it's visually accessible or whatever. But like for someone who isn't able to see it, a screen reader doesn't know what the heck you're looking at. I remember looking at one of Adam Wathan's recent videos. It was like a Build UIs That Don't Suck series, maybe. But he had one where it was like, okay, one of the frustrations I've had in the past was like, you grab a template from somebody and they only put an anchor around the header. But seriously, the whole thing should be clickable. But if you do that, then all of the text in there goes and becomes the clickable text for the screen reader and stuff. There was actually a reason why it wasn't done that way. But then Adam was showing like a way to kind of put the anchor in the one place, but then like the whole thing becomes clickable and stuff.
With the absolute.
And I was like, yeah, this is really useful, like important knowledge to have. And, allows you to do a lot better job. Whereas I've always done the lazy route where I'm like, well, I want the whole thing clickable. I'll just make the whole thing an anchor tag. Well, that's not the right answer here, actually. And that's fascinating, like how much stuff it's easy to take for granted because, you got to build it for desktop and mobile and iPads and then touch devices and screen readers and whatever. And then, we need it in dark mode too. And it's got to be all accessible that way too. And it's kind of crazy these days. The expectations of like building a UI have to have animations and all of this other stuff. And you're like, I just want to build this feature and make it functional, but now I got to go polish all these turds, man.
Yeah. The one that always gets me, that annoys me, and I make a very big point of making sure I don't do it, is icon buttons not having an ARIA label.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So like on mobile, like your button
Yeah, 'cause
shrinks
the
to just an
kids-
icon.
The kids don't know what the floppy disk is, bro.
Yeah. These kids these days, my floppy disk.
That is definitely a good point. There's lots of UI where you collapse the sidebar and it just becomes icons or whatever. And it's like, well, yeah, sure. But you can't just slap tooltips on it because screen reader may not actually fire the hover thing the way you think it is going to. And like
on mobile, it'll fire the hover before the action.
Yeah. So it ends up being like way different, and you can really get tripped up with that stuff. It frustrates me because it's like so much work. I still wish we had Flux UI equivalent in Rails. There's been some component libraries, but nobody's gone even remotely as detailed and to the perfection level as Flux. And man, the quality of that is just tip top.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is say like, I want an icon button, but here's the label and whatever. And it generates that for you. It's slick.
Those type of component libraries, I've tried multiple times to like build something that's like that, but it's hard, man. It's hard
Real
work.
hard.
It really gives you like
And
much more
Caleb's like a
perspective.
master,
Yeah.
a JavaScript master, having done Alpine and stuff. So like it makes a lot of sense that he's able to put those things together. He'll tweet one day and be like, hey, what about a date picker? What do you expect from this? And some people are like, I want to be able to select ranges. And he's like, okay, well, what does that mean? What do you do if it goes across months? How does that work? And how does these different things work? And he like is able to figure out, here's the 2 or 3 options we want to support, but not too many, not too complicated, not things that are like conflicting with each other. And then he builds it, and then it's like tomorrow it's ready to go. Dude,
Yeah, when
it's
we
awesome.
we sat down with him at Rails World Conf.
Yes. Toronto.
Yes.
Right. Yes.
It was really
Yes.
interesting to kind of like listen to him talk about the way he builds things. Like it's like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah,
I'm
he's
not
awesome.
like I can't think like this.
One of the things that I've struggled with is I don't know that I really like stimulus for a library like that. What I would rather have is something
Rather have
more like
Alpine.
what he has.
Yeah.
Is he's got like the flux colon and whatever tags you put in your templates. And it's like they're almost just web components. Because I don't know if they may be more like an ERB helper or something, because they really generate like an actual button tag or whatever. But you type this flux tag into your template. But it does get wired up with the JavaScript and everything. And it's like, it would be slick. The one trouble with the web components is like, how do you add a callback to the click event or like the change event or something? And it's like not as easy to inject something like that because you have to select the element and figure out a way to wire it up. And then you're like back to sort of the stimulus way of doing things. And it's like, well, I wish we could just add this logic inline or something, which is kind of what's the secret beauty of Alpine there.
I mean,
so,
he had a podcast a while back with Adam Wathan where they talked about Alpine, and he was literally like, I liked stimulus, but they didn't go far enough. And I'm like, yes,
Yeah.
I agree. He took stimulus to like what it could have been. I thought like a lot of the goal of stimulus was like to move a lot of that to the HTML. And it's like, well, Alpine actually does move it all to the HTML.
if you're going to do like a toggle or something, you still have to have some JavaScript to make the stimulus component work. But like it's pure HTML when you're doing, I mean, inline JavaScript a little bit just to make something hide and show. But like you don't write a JavaScript file at all. You don't write a class. You just do a JavaScript snippets inline. And there's so many times where I just wish I had that because I don't really want to have a stimulus controller with one function and one line of code inside of it or whatever. Like it could just be invisible.
Yeah,
That would be kind of cool.
it would be
to,
nice.
to
I feel
also have with stimulus, I think.
like the view component sidecar files, I've started to use those a lot more. It's like instead of having like a stimulus controller hanging out somewhere, this is an audio podcast. You can't see I'm waving, but it's somewhere in the ether, right? Versus it being right there with your component, with your HTML file. Just really co-located. The only thing is then it gets really annoying to write the freaking controller names. But otherwise, I like that a lot. That's helped me bridge a little bit of that gap.
Yeah, that becomes really important. The larger your applications get, is like, I don't want to have to be jumping around too much. I want it all in one place as much as possible so that I can just reason about it. Because if it gets to be too big and we got the dialogue controller over here, but then we've inherited from it to have the slide over controller, and that's in this other component that uses that and then builds on top of it and yada, yada. It becomes jumping through hoops to figure out how this is pieced together. That was kind of the beauty of Alpine. I look at this HTML snippet and I understand exactly how this interactive component works, because all it is the HTML plus some inline JavaScript or whatever. But yeah, it's one of those forever problems, I think. Just organizing code is always hard.
Yeah, organizing anything is hard.
That was one of the things in the guy's app that we noticed too, was there was a couple controllers and models that were over 1,000 lines. It's obviously a core component of the product or the app you're building. This is a model that's not a God object, but it's pretty much as close as possible to something like that. And, we were talking about, there are sub components to this where you have a whole section of methods that are all related to this, keeping track of changes to the record or something. Put that into a versioning concern or something like that so that it's all in one place. It still can be nested under the parent model that it's part of, but you can just organize it, put it all together. It may still use things from the other components, but that component itself is responsible for all of its properties and whatever as much as possible. And then you've given it a name. Whereas the only concept of it was inside the main model. Maybe it's user roles or something. And if you only put that in the user model, then you have a whole bunch of methods all grouped together that are admin role or, member role or billing role or whatever. And you just needed to extract, this is a roles concern or module or whatever it is. Could be another model even. But you haven't quite given it its own name and its own presence and stuff. Feels muddy until you start to do that. And then all of a sudden you're oh, I can just search for roles now. And I find exactly what I need, where it is, and then have all the context right here. And that can be probably, I would assume, useful to LLMs as well. And it's here's all the context you need in this file. So you should be able to even make that a better experience as well, keeping it organized. But I felt a lot of the code it generated in the LLM was just dumping it into, he had a one controller that had the standard CRUD plus 12 other actions in it. Yeah, this is where you do nested controllers and you give them their responsibilities. Users, search controller. Voila. Search goes there. It doesn't need to go in the user's controller.
Podia is a big app, and I promise you, we don't have a model file over 1,000 lines. There is one model we have a massive SQL query in, but that doesn't count. If that one, I don't think
lines.
I don't think it is. I'm pretty sure it's not, but I was that's the only one that stuck out in my mind. I was that one is ridiculously long for no reason. But I still don't think it's 1,000 lines. There's no way.
I am curious how the namespace stuff will affect things in the future. If any of those changes improve or add some functionality that we don't realize we could benefit from, I'll be curious to see what happens. Yeah, that might be a good thing too, where it's if you put it all in one file and you tell the LLM, hey, generate test suite for this module, it should be able to see all that and reason about it a little bit better than here's the entire user file. And
it's got to split it up into context blocks. Yeah,
because I still think the thing that it has the most trouble with is keeping the context window. You need it to be large, but it's fascinating because you need it to be specific you only care about testing all the roles in here, but you also need to be aware of all of Rails and how all of it works and how all of SQL works and JavaScript and HTML and CSS and browsers and whatever else. But yet, I just want you to write me these tests. There's a lot of extra context it needs, but you need the focus so it knows what to focus on or whatever, which is what we're still good with as human beings. That's kind of our real intelligence, I guess, or general AGI.
Not our general intelligence or lack thereof.
Yeah, there might be a little bit of that.
Well,
Yeah, man.
slaps knee. Well,
You got any fun plans for this weekend?
no. Probably
You're just-
getting ready to leave. I've got stuff to do.
You got 2 months to take off here.
Yeah. So it might be indefinitely. So
Yeah. Yeah. If it is, you got to pack a lot of bags.
I pride myself on being a very light traveler, but if I'm not coming back, then yeah, I'll have to pack a few more things.
The one-way ticket won't take up a lot of room.
That's true. That's true. All right.
All right, sir. Catch you maybe in forever.
On the flip side, dude.
So yeah.